The major diseases would be the soft rot, bacterial soft rot, black mold, damping off, and southern blight, especially specifically for onions. More or less, if you go on Google stuff, and if you probably read a book in terms of pest and disease on onions, you can find an entire book, but we want to talk about the most important. All right? The other thing too is that later on in these seminars, you will actually get someone dealing with pest and disease. So I'm not obviously going to go as detailed as you really need to be in certain aspects on how to control your pests and disease. But we have an idea so that by the time you get there, you know what they are talking about. All right? So in bacterial soft rot, this is what it would look like. I think most of us who cook might have seen something like this before. All right? And soft rot is caused by a bacteria called the Erwinia carnivora, sorry. The bacteria can enter the neck tissue as the plant matures and then invades one or more scales. So it actually feeds on the juiciness of the scales. It prefers that over the leaves at the top. All right? At this stage, the infected tissues are water soaked and pale yellow to brown. As the rot progresses, the invaded scaly leaves, fleshy scales become soft. And this is because it is a bacteria and it will smell. Okay, so you will know that it's there. Disease bulbs produce watery, foul-smelling fluids from the neck when you squeeze them. So you will know it's there. It will smell horrible. So how are we looking to control it? We need to avoid water irrigation, overhead irrigation like sprinklers, etc. Normally for us in Barbados, we tend to use a lot more drip irrigation because one, we don't have that big, unless you plan to use a hose, we don't really have that big irrigation, the sprinkler irrigation that you will see in the States. So this tends not to be a major issue, but in reality, unless you're doing transplants, where you would use a sprinkler system, after you've done your transplants and you have your crop in your field, you need to have your irrigation, your drip irrigation already laid out. All right? Whereas the water is directed towards the roots, and that's where you want to have it. You need to control pests and diseases. Why is that so important? A weaker plant, a plant that has been invaded by pests or any pest other than even the ones that we've seen before, it means that you have weakened the system. One, the plant is concentrating on fixing itself back from all the damage that these pests have done. And now it's going to be a target for anything else. Like you think about yourself. If you get a good wound, somebody give you a good gash, and then the next minute you have some other infection, your head hurt, you got fever, all kind of stuff. Same thing happens to plants. Everything can get in. All right? Allow tops to mature before harvesting. Avoid damaging bulbs during harvest. This is imperative. How would we damage a bulb during harvest? Anybody has an idea of how you can damage? We do it a lot in Barbados, because I find one of the things about Barbados is we harvest, but we really don't think about storage after, so we just pull, yank, and throw. Okay? Pull, yank, and throw. And that causes major damage to any food. If somebody had to pull, yank, and throw you, yeah, you would get a good gash, you get a bruised spot. So the same thing happens to your crop. And obviously now, you've pulled, yanked, and thrown them, they're no longer in the soil, so they can't do major repair for themselves. Right now, all they can do is suffer. All right? So no longer has a good long shelf life, and it's going to be damaged. It could easily be damaged by bacterial soft rot. Your onions need to be completely dried. When we speak about drying the onions, a lot of people don't understand it at this stage. Drying your onions after you have grown them in the field, you've harvested them, when they reach a maturity, the scales have all joined together. And this area, what we call the neck, what I showed you, needs to be dry. Why? because of the same thing. If it's still moist, if there's still an opening inside there, your bacteria can actually enter. And that's going to be causing the same issues that you're seeing here: smelliness, not having a good product. And once you have one bad apple, it spoils the rest. Okay, so you need to make sure that it is dry, and you need to provide the appropriate temperature and humidity with good ventilation to prevent moisture and condensation from forming on the actual bulbs. So there's a lot to take into mind after you've harvested, basically. This is southern blight. Not sure how much people would have seen this, but it's basically, you can see it's aesthetic on the outside of the thing. You can see the spores there. You can see it here also. And it's serious disease by a soil-borne fungus, Sclerotium rothschild, and usually affects the lower stem near the soil surface. The roots can become infected also. Once the roots are infected, no plant. Once the stems are infected, no plant, no bulb. Loss of money. We have damping off, and this normally occurs at the seedling stage, more or less, with your younger plants. It's also, well, basically this disease is caused by pythium, and it basically kills the roots and the base of the seedling at the surface of the soil. All right, how can you control this? You need healthy seeds that have been treated. And seedlings should be, or you can use the seedlings. Once you know that your seedlings have already been out, you know that you should be pretty okay. Avoid excessive irrigation, because obviously this disease tends to like moist conditions. So you need to watch how you're irrigating. You need to have proper drainage, and you need to avoid soil compaction. Why? Because obviously with soil compaction, the water sort of settles in there, so it's not going to be drained off properly. So we have damping off, and this is basically how it would look. Eventually your crops are going to die. And black mold. You've seen this one, right? Right. This, the fungus occurs on or between the outside leaves of the bulb, especially along the veins, like what you can see here, right? Aspergillus niger, it is a fungus, and it is basically, this is it, black mold. It's normally aesthetic. This is at the stage where you're looking to sell, and people that know might not want to buy. All right, so you have to be very careful with this one also. Right? In the control, you're looking for varieties that are resistant. Use a 2 to 3 year crop rotation. Everything is crop rotation, weeding, etc. Choose land with good drainage. Ensure the seeds are clean from spores. Spores are basically how the fungus is born. Okay? You know, like how we have a baby, more or less, it's basically how the fungus is born. And then transplants. And then that your transplants are actually healthy. Do not harvest crops during wet weather. Because if you do that, you will end up with a lot of loss. Collect and burn all debris from the actual harvest, because if you leave them there, there's always going to be something lingering in your field after. And carefully dry bulbs, store them below 80% humidity. How you store your plants are equally as important as how you actually have them in the field. It's not only taking care of them in the field, but how you store them. Because a lot of farmers tend to, I don't know if you've actually heard this, but people come back with your products and say, but you sent me a bundle of rotten stuff. I had to pay good money for this. But you knew you sell them at that stage, it was good. But then you have to look at where you were storing. You also have to look at the temperature you were storing at, etc.